80 years ago, Allied prisoners of war were being liberated from across the collapsing Japanese empire.
I was taken prisoner in Singapore, from where I was sent to Thailand and compelled to help build a railway, during which time at least 50% of the people that were sent there died of cholera, dysentery, diphtheria and malnutrition. From Thailand, I returned to Singapore and was embarked on board a Japanese ship which was to take us to Japan.
Throughout September of 1945, former Japanese colonial subjects in Taiwan worked to rescue and feed British and American air and seamen that had, until very recently, been their captives.
And now, I've come across Taiwanese in a way, and this is uncomfortable because where I have come across them was as guards on some of what became known as the hell ships. That some of the American POWs were riding on to be sent to Japan.
Located at the geographic center of the Japanese Empire, Taiwan was an ideal transit point for POWs being shipped north to Japan's main island on squalid, airless, overheated ships.
My father came to Taiwan, which of course was Formosa then, and in one of the hell ships, and they held at the docks and kind of humiliated in front of the locals.
Ann Wheeler's father was one of the more than 1,000 POWs forced into slave labor in a mine in the mountains above Keelung, in what is now New Taipei. In total, about 4,000 captured soldiers and airmen were held in 14 camps across the island. The camps were overseen by the Japanese military, but some relied on locals for staffing. Discipline and orders ultimately flowed straight from Tokyo. Just months before the end of the war, 14 Allied airmen were executed here, shot or beheaded on the orders of Japanese authorities. And while they were guarded by Taiwanese prison guards, it was Japanese military police that were carrying out the killings. Today, this is all that's left of the walls of Taipei prison. Now, these walls were built from stones taken from Taipei's old city walls, laid by laborers who had little say as colonial subjects in the future of their city. Still, even under colonial rule, many of the 200,000 Taiwanese who served in the Japanese military volunteered when the call came from Tokyo. They were deployed alongside forced conscripts, taking on roles across Southeast Asia and China.
Before 1941, Japan was mostly focusing on the war in China. And some Taiwanese started to serve and to be recruited as interpreters in China for a good reason, because most Taiwanese were descendants of immigrants from southern China. So they shared common language and culture with people in China, especially in southern China.
And while most translation work was bureaucratic and innocuous, at times it served far darker purposes. Malaysian director Lau Kek Hua has spent years interviewing members of Southeast Asia's Chinese diaspora about the war.
Make use during the situation when they need translation. When you come to Mexico, you need to question people. You need to spot out who are the ones to be killed from the natives, who are the ones to be spared. All those kind of location situation, Taiwanese soldiers would make use because of the language proficiency.
Between 1937 and 1945, up to 20 million civilians were killed under the Japanese Empire through massacres, forced labor, famine, and disease. In Southeast Asia, the death toll included up to 1 million in the Philippines, as many as 4 million in Indonesia, and up to 2 million in Vietnam, along with hundreds of thousands more in what is now Myanmar, Malaysia, and Thailand.
The starved bodies of the liberated people bear witness to the sort of existence left to them by Japan's co-prosperity sphere.
Although Taiwanese were stationed across the empire, many were victims as well as perpetrators, forced into service, some as child soldiers.
Most Taiwanese are kind of stuck in a colonial system of bad choice A, worst choice B. You don't really have many choices. So I'm not sure it's necessarily Taiwanese not looking at their responsibility until recently. I think it's more an issue of the inability to kind of openly discuss those possibilities and to discuss the historical narrative, because that door wasn't open due to martial law.
80 years after the war's end, every Allied POW ever held in Taiwan is now dead. and the generation of Taiwanese that held them captive is fading fast. With first-hand witnesses disappearing, the task of reckoning with Taiwan's wartime past falls to historians, who try to make sense of choices made under extreme circumstances.
I think we need to look into wartime responsibility, not in a legal sense, not even in a political sense, but I think we need to look into wartime responsibility in terms of remembering. And by remembering what Taiwanese had experienced and done during the war, I think it will only help us to better understand the essence and the nature of war.
With Japan collapsing and Republic of China rule just weeks away, September 1945 began a period of rapid change for Taiwan. Peace had come to much of Asia, but its people still faced years of violence and political turmoil, leaving little room to confront wartime responsibility. 80 years later, Taiwan is still shaped by that turbulent past. Eason, John Su, Jeffrey Chen, and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.